Hello, I'm just in part 2 of Right to Control. The key bit for us is that this isn't just about adult social care. And the whole point about Right to Control is that the government have decided that they want to try something in a very, very, very different way, which hasn't just mean that you're receiving money instead of a service, but this is more about a culture shift and a mindset change for all the professionals that are involved in disabled people to enable them to get the life that they actually should be entitled to in the first place. So the view was really that people could receive a different type of service by not actually receiving a service at all. So the eligibility is still the same, so you're eligible for adult social care, you're eligible for work choice, so that's our latest process under Department of Work and Pensions for employment-related support. But at that point it stops. So at the moment, if you were eligible for work choice, you would then immediately get directed to Remploy, or for Leicester, we have an organisation called Work Steps or something. And that's it, that's your choice. Whereas this way, the person can say, yes, fine, great, eligible, but actually I don't want to receive a service from either of those two organisations. I want to take the money and I want to identify through my support plan my outcome, i.e. I want to be able to work better, or I want to be able to get support to be in work and stay in work, and I want to use the money to enable me to meet my outcomes. But I don't just want to use the bit of money that I've got for work choice, I also want to use the money to put into the bigger pot, and I might also be eligible for adult social care, and I can bring that money in as well. I might also be eligible for housing related support, and I can bring that money in as well. And suddenly you've got a much bigger pot of money that's far more flexible for the individual to actually enable them to meet the needs of their support plan and to enable them to actually have a life. And that's why it's so challenging, because organisations like the Department of Work and Pensions and Job Centre Plus have never considered giving someone money. They're quite happy pointing people to a service, but the notion of actually handing over a value, a cash payment instead of a service, is radical. It's so radical that 10 months down the line, we in Leicester have 2 people that have gone on to work choice because and you've got how many? 1, there you go. Because the disability employment advisors struggle with it. It doesn't come naturally to them. And I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago where they've been told categorically to forget about the money, to forget about handing someone the money, but to concentrate on what difference that kind of approach is going to make for the individual and what difference it will make to that person's life. And that's the key bit for Right to Control. This isn't about a system, as Jude already said. This is about a change in mindset. This is about actually considering who this person is, what they want to achieve, and what's the best way of them being able to do so that isn't about us with our professional hats on dictating almost that we know that this is right for you. Because a lot of the time it isn't right. And that's really where kind of Right to Control builds on personalisation from adult social care, but pulls in lots of other funding streams. Now I've got about 19 slides that I'm not going to talk to, I'm just going to flick through, but afterwards when you get the chance to look back through, there's a lot of detail in them that I wanted you to be able to take away to help you understand how we're doing what we're doing, really. The other point that was made this morning was about risk, and I think it was Rachel talked about healthy risks with Colleen. Now that's something that our social workers don't like, risk. They don't kind of do risk. They're risk adverse. Everything's about but what if. So when we did direct payments 6, 7 years ago, everything was around if we give someone the money instead of the service, they might go on holiday. Or they might misspend the money in a different way. And we need to have all these checks and balances to make sure that they do not abuse the system. And forgot that actually this money is about enabling a person to live their life independently, not being dictated to by adult social care. And healthy risks are a really positive thing that we can do, but actually it's a very hard thing for our professional heads to get around, because ultimately we learn through making mistakes and we learn through taking risks, but we don't seem to apply that same notion to someone with a disability. We seem very comfortable in applying it to a child as they grow older and allowing them for the first time to walk to school instead of being taken to school, but we don't apply the same theory to a disabled person. And we seem to hold them in a suspended animation type position whereby they're not allowed to make a mistake and they're not allowed to take a risk because something could go wrong. And actually, by doing so, they never learn and they never get to develop and they never let stretch their wings and grow. So this again is where right to control comes in and says, actually, let's take the biggest risk in the world and let's just let someone get on with it. And it's not a big risk. You know, we're all responsible for ourselves. This is about helping the organisations to step back and say, you do know best for your own needs, and we will enable you to meet that need. And when things go adrift, we'll be there to support you to keep you moving forward, but we're not going to tell you what is right for you, because actually we genuinely don't know half the time. My side of things really for today was to talk around the employment side rather than to go into the adult social care and housing related support side. In England, we've had quite a few initiatives fairly recently, since 2009, about trying to actively encourage disabled people to get into employment and to get into work and to sustain employment. 2 years rather than the 13 weeks which most supported employment schemes focus on. But for this kind of approach with right to control, if you were going through the work choice programme, you have to get into work within a 9-month period. With right to control, once you've got the money, it could take you 2 years to get into work. It could take you 3 years. There's no time limit to it, and that's the other empowering part about the process. So for work choice, it's really targeted at those disabled people that aren't eligible for any of the work programme and really are the furthest from the employment side with the most barriers to getting them into work. And actually a lot of the providers, while they want to be person-centred, are still driven by targets. So the opportunity that right to control gives is actually to enable someone to take the money and not to be tied down by an organisational target to get you into work within a certain period of time, but to really think about what's my aspiration for work, what do I really want to do, and to be able to explore that, to be able to get the right training and the right support to make that a reality, rather than, well, I'll learn how to write a CV and I'll do a bit of confidence building, because apparently we do quite a lot of courses in confidence building, but we know that actually the only way you grow in confidence is by experience. You know, when you're in a job, you learn how to do the job. You don't learn how to do the job and then get the job. None of us start the job on day one knowing every part about the job that we've just been appointed to. And that kind of approach is where right to control again is trying to force an approach that's different, to say to someone, okay, think about what you want to do. Now the fact that it's for 18 plus is a slight challenge for us, because actually if you're really going to affect change, then you want to get to younger people, you want to get pre-18. In fact, you want to get pre-transition, which for us is about 14. And so we're doing some work with schools to try and talk to them about what difference it would make if you're talking to young people about their aspiration for life, their aspiration for where they want to live, their aspiration for having a job, and then to look at what difference do we need to put in place in terms of our support systems to make that a reality for someone, rather than wait until they get to 18 and then saying, oh, by the way, now you're entitled to a house, now you're entitled to get a job. Because at that stage, the young person hasn't even considered what they want to do. I've got a case study here, really, which is trying to explain some of the way that the right to control has actually worked for a young person, in this case with a learning disability. Because one of the other challenges that we had was right to control hadn't considered people with learning disabilities when they were putting it all together. So they'd really thought about people with physical and sensory disabilities, and mental health and learning disability hadn't really come into their thoughts. And suddenly they were challenged on the kind of issues of 16 hours worth of work, around some of the core issues that are actually the biggest block to getting someone into employment. So they created something called Jobs First, which was right to control but for people with learning disabilities. And I had the joy of leading Jobs First in Leicester prior to right to control starting. And then right to control started, and we've kind of joined them all back together again. And again, it just shows sometimes the lack of thinking at a senior level, if you like, at a strategic level, about who this is actually targeting. And they don't think about the individual, they think about the process, the system, the change, and then suddenly realise that through the process, system and change, they've forgotten about who the real people are that are actually going to use it. So the case study that I've got here is of a young lady that didn't want to go to Remploy, didn't want to do the normal thing, wanted to do something slightly different. The challenge on us was then, we don't have lots of providers that will enable you to go in with your money and say, I'll spot purchase a service from you. We have providers that are block contracted. So our next issue is actually, fine, great, we can give people money, we've got over that hurdle. The next hurdle is where are they going to spend their money? Because in reality, we've got Remploy, we've got Shore Trust, we've got Working Links, I think we've got Apex, so there's 4. That's not much of a choice. But unless we've got another organisation that can offer something different, so then it's about saying to individuals, actually you don't have to go to a provider at all. You could go to the lady down the road that knows how to do something that you want to be able to do, and by paying her to teach you how she does what she does, you could get a job doing it. That's fine. That's legal, that's legitimate, and right to control, that's absolutely possible. But to a disability employment advisor, that's so far away from what they're used to doing that it's almost inconceivable. And there sits kind of the challenge really on right to control. The system's really easy. The reality of actually what people are going to do with this money is the harder part. So locally, recently, we've had someone said, if you give me the money, I can get driving lessons and I can be a driving instructor. Yeah, so they'll go into work and they'll be, contributing back with their tax, etc. But the disability employment advisor wasn't happy with that because they wanted them to have 3 job goals and they didn't see that that was enough to just have 1 job goal. The fact they'd got 1 job goal should have been enough for them to say, yes, here you go, and off you go. So it's all of those things that we're really having to challenge quite hard. What I've found interesting today while I've been here as well is the difference between England and Ireland. So I'm aware that one of the funding streams is access to work, and I'm not sure if you actually have access to work over in Ireland. So if I briefly explain, this is a big pot of money. In England, it's about 100 million a year, and it's there to enable a disabled person to get into work and to sustain employment. So in addition to work choice and all the other bits, once you're in 16 hours worth of work, you can say to the Access to Work team, I need additional support with whatever it might be. I'm dyslexic, I get extra software. Access to Work pay for that software. A colleague that's just started work with me, she's got a physical disability and she needs a support worker. So Access to Work pay for the support worker. Because actually it's cheaper for them to pay for that so as she can work and she can earn a living than it is for her to be on benefits. So that's one of the funding streams that we've talked about, but I realise again it doesn't apply over here. The other thing, we've got support broker there. The big thing that we identified really was the fact that in order for someone to be truly free of all of the systems and all of the professional views about what someone can or can't achieve, you need someone independent. So a support broker is basically an independent person that will work with the disabled person to look at their support plan. So they used to be called a care plan, and now it's called a support plan, and it's all about outcomes. So a care plan was about how many hours of this do you need and how many hours of that do you need. A support plan is about actually what do you want to achieve with your life. And the support broker is there to then look at how are you going to get to those outcomes. So do you need to be able to go off and identify different providers, as we've already talked about, or is there something else that you could do that doesn't cost but will enable you to actually have a better life for yourself?